Is it visible to you all, my presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right, all right. So I'll just quickly start and then we can move ahead with the question and answers. Okay, so before I start the presentation, I also wanted to take you guys, all of you, to NIMHANS, like the pictures. So the first one is the psychiatry department of NIMHANS. The below it, the M.V. Govind Swami building, the third floor is clinical psychology department. Here you see a very beautiful garden. So you will all not believe that this is the garden where the closed wards are, and also adjacent to it, NIMHANS has inpatient wards. So it's a very beautiful place. Then NIMHANS also takes care of your mental health and physical health. So we also have a gymnasium there. So this beautiful building, you won't realize that it's a gymnasium. And this beautiful trees, it is one of my favorite trees in NIMHANS, and it's right in front of the OPD. So even when you enter OPD for your daily workups, so the moment you enter, again, there's a very beautiful, aura that you all would get. Okay, so the outline for today's presentation would be, firstly, inspiration, then I would talk about preparation, and then I will share resource material. So perhaps my presentation would be the experiential, so I'll be sharing my experiences, so it will be more of an experiential approach. If at all any one of you have any doubts, you can ask me later. Okay, so who inspired me? So he's is Dr. Nigesh Kolarath. Back in 2017, I joined an internship under him in the Department of University of Calicut, CDMRP. And that time I did not really have any idea about clinical psychology, what it comprises of, what all career opportunities one would get after becoming a clinical psychologist. But I think in that center itself, I actually got a very, holistic approach. And perhaps they only worked with children population. So that was also very fascinating in itself. And it also gave me a lot of insight that postmasters, I need an MPhil degree. Otherwise, the RCI license will be a difficulty. And then the practice regulations and other things that, it will be only constricted to counseling, but then I'll not be able to do full-fledged therapy assessments, I think, which is a very important part of psychology. So I think currently Dr. Nigesh has joined UPSC as a psychologist. So I'm very grateful to him. Then coming to preparation. So I think first thing that is very important is deciding to do an MPhil. So when I decided, I think I was also very confused. So I think my master's got over in 2017. And 2017 August, I basically decided that, so I was still brainstorming ways. I had army on my plate. I had MPhil. I thought I would go ahead with my PhD if at all I want to pursue a clinical career or academic career. So I think I had many things, or perhaps prepare for UPSC. So then out of all, I also had to do pros and cons analysis, and also I weighed which option is the best for me. So then deciding on the MPhil part also was a very difficult choice. But I think my internship in CDA in Calicut under Dr. Nigesh, so that was very insightful. And I think somewhere I got my, perhaps orientation from there itself. So I think even an internship can have that dream in your life. So I think I would, again, deciding to do an MPhil is a very, very important part. Then deciding the institute. Now, I know it's difficult to get any of the institutes. I'm not saying that NIMHANS is very difficult. I think all of them are very difficult to crack because there are only a limited number of seats and a lot of applicants. But then if we would aim at, an institute which is perhaps private, I'm not saying private institutes are bad, but as compared to government, that it's slightly easier to crack that because less number of applicants for a variety of reasons. One is very high fee structure, wherein in government institutes, you really have to pay a little and you would also be getting stipend. So that is why I thought of all these things. And always aim for the best, because if you would aim for something which is below that level, perhaps you would prepare accordingly. But if you aim for the best, it's okay if you don't get it, but then still we have always heard this phrase, sky is the limit. So I aimed for the best, which was NIMHANS. And I'll also share my personal experience. You all would be thinking that perhaps I was very good in academics or I was the topper of my university. No, it wasn't the case. So I think somewhere I was an average student throughout my career. But then whenever it came to preparing something seriously for any of the examination, I think that was the time wherein I used to put in all my efforts. So I think somewhere during my master's UG days, I was also involved in many other societies. I'll talk about that later. So do not feel that, okay, perhaps I'm not the topper of the college. How will I crack NIMHANS? Because NIMHANS is supposed to be or is meant for only cream of India. No, it is not the case. If you would prepare hard, anybody can crack it. Then the third point that I've mentioned is that there is no right or wrong way of preparing. So people feel that, okay, perhaps if you would read 10 hours more than that, that would be fine. If we would just read 2 hours a day, that would be fine. So I think perhaps we need to ask ourselves how much we are okay with preparing. But the more time you devote, the better it is. Fourth point, managing your own stress levels. So I think this is also something wherein I worked really hard on. So every day I made sure that I took out half an hour for running or any physical activity, even if I'm doing something, watching a YouTube tutorial and then doing those exercises. So I think somewhere managing stress levels was one of the main part of my preparation. I remember when I went to write the exam, I was not at all stressed. So I think that, and perhaps I am somebody who has a little bit of anxiety when it comes to exam, be it internals also. So during NIMHANS entrance, which was the biggest exam in my life for my career, I did not feel stressed at all, because I think somewhere the exercising physical aspect, along with that, I also tried relaxation. So during the day, twice I used to do a technique called Yog Nidra. So you all can read about it. You all can watch YouTube tutorials. So it was just for 10 to 15 minutes both the times. But then it used to refresh me as if I've just woken up from sleep. So that was also something which was very important. So before lunch, I used to do it so that post lunch, I won't feel sleepy. And also post my workout in the evening for half an hour, then 10 minutes again a relaxation called Yog Nidra. That's how I managed my stress. And also, since I was not working, so I decided to take a break and not join any institution for say work experience or anything of that sort. So I primarily decided to stay at home. So somewhere that was also important, social interaction. So I also used to spend good enough time with my parents and few of my other relatives. So I think everybody was very cautious with respect to not disturbing me. That way, I am very grateful to have that environment as well. So whenever I wanted to spend time, they all were available. But when I was studying, nobody disturbed me. Then coming to how I prepared. So like I told you, till August, I was just juggling between many options, what to do, which option to pursue. And then I decided perhaps it's the MPhil that I would want to go ahead with. So I started my preparation, I would say mid-September 2017. Before that, I was just relaxing. So wasn't into studying at all to February 2018. So it was almost 5.5 to 6 months of preparation. In between, I also took a month off in the month of December. So that's when I had my army interview as well. So I was also fascinated towards it. So I thought of give it a try because I cleared that entrance. So I think that took 1 month of my life. I think I'm saying it my life because these 6 months were very crucial for me. So you can say if I also remove that 1 month out of it, but then in that 1 month, I did not stop preparing it all. I was revising my notes at least so that I will not feel like everything is appearing new after the interview and everything. So that was okay, though I took an off in between, but then definitely 2 to 3 hours a day I was spending on my preparation for MPhil as well. Then, if you ask me, apart from that, how many hours did I devote? So it was somewhere around 8 to 10 hours a day. I used to take a very good sleep, that at least 6, 7, 8 hours minimum sleep I used to take, so that there would be, consolidation of memory, whatever we were reading, or I was reading. Perhaps I was also applying few memory concepts on myself. Then very limited media use. So I'm not saying that all of you have to do this, because there's no right or wrong way of preparing. But then I only kept in touch with two of my friends who had the similar goal of clearing MPhil, and they were also my very good friends since UG and my PG days. So I constantly kept in touch with them through my mother's phone. So basically, I did not use my phone in that duration. I had my laptop because I needed that, but then I did not really have that distraction, which saved a lot of energy. And I think a lot of negative energy also. If I would have had that phone, I know how I would have researched about, okay, how difficult it is to get into NIMHANS or other institutes. So I think I'm glad that I limited my media use. Then, like I was just mentioning about my friends, two of my friends. So I used to have frequent group discussions. So not group discussions on any random topic, but whatever topic we used to feel was difficult for us. For example, me, I used to, get scared of statistics. So there was this friend of mine in the same group. He helped me with that part. He had difficulty with some other topic, so I helped him. Similarly, the third friend also. And so now you would also be thinking whether coaching is important or not here when I talked about group discussions, because coaching is a setup wherein you get to know more people and you discuss more frequently. So I personally did not take any coaching for anything. So the things that I'm telling you, all these things were told by Dr. Nigesh to me. So somewhere, whatever he told me, the advices that he told me, I think perhaps I went ahead with the same advices, and I did not take any coaching. Out of the three of us, one of the friends, she took coaching, but then alongside she also prepared, whatever we were preparing. So two of us actually got into NIMHANS, and the third person got into Manipal, which is the second best after NIMHANS. So that way, even if you want to join coaching, but then don't feel that, okay, whatever we are being taught in coaching, that's enough. No, that's not enough. Whatever you are being taught, you also have to build on that and other things as well, because they can't teach you everything. There will be limited time. So it's good for guidance, but then it's not something that you should completely dependent upon. Then I also, since I started my preparation from September, I started solving papers from the month of October. And I'm very glad that I had a group of three friends, like three of us. So the one who got into Manipal, he suggested why not we all also solve some papers. If he wouldn't have given us that insight, I don't think I probably would have cracked NIMHANS. So then we also found out, because there were three brains working on the same task, how to find papers with reliable keys. So I'll share one thing with all of you. So what we did, we know all the states have this state eligibility test. So NET exam is the national eligibility test, and each and every state, so we have so many states in our country, lucky us. So what we did, if say for example, if it's Rajasthan state, so we went Rajasthan Public Service Association, RPSC. If it was say Kerala, so we went ahead with the Kerala Public Service Commission. So there we found out old papers along with the keys. So that was really helpful. And trust me, a lot of papers. So I'll also share what were the questions in NIMHANS, but I would say at least 30 to 40% questions I was able to answer correctly, because I had solved so many papers. I cannot even count. I think it was this much, like the pile if you would keep. So there were many papers. You can say that past 10 years, whatever papers we were able to find. So that ways we were able to save time, because three of us were working on the same task arranging papers, and then sharing it across through emails. Okay, coming to again preparation, then when you are preparing, when you have finally decided that I want to write NIMHANS entrance or whatever exam you would want to write, you also want to know what kind of a pattern that is being followed when it comes to MPhil in clinical psychology, because it's very, very different from NET and JRF exam or any other examination, be it the PhD examination. So somewhere I decided to write as many exams as possible, because I decided very late. It was already September. But then NIMHANS entrance, I still had given in 2017, just to see where I was, falling. So I scored, I think, somewhere around 52 marks out of 100. But then I was very proud of it, because without preparation, I scored 52 out of 100 in my first attempt. But what I did differently here, I came back, and before I could come back also, immediately after the exam, I made a note of all the questions that came. Like, I still have that copy with me. I was just searching it before our session. So I was able to write around 40 questions out of 100. So at least I can give you some insight that what was the paper like in 2017, though I still have 40 questions. But trust me, the other questions were also of similar difficulty. Then I also wrote PGI Rohtak, NIMHANS Calicut, uh, then NET-JRF 2017, and Amity Jaipur 2018, which was just 1 month prior to my NIMHANS paper. So when I give, so I think there's a drawback in our system that if we want to apply to a particular institute, we have to travel up until and unless it's a centralized college like or institution like NIMHANS. So there are many centers. But for NIMHANS, I had to travel to Calicut from Delhi. For Amity Jaipur, I had to travel to Jaipur from Delhi. For Rohtak also, Delhi to Rohtak. So I think this was a difficulty. And since we also have to decide how to commute, because if you would just aim for each and every paper, it's going to difficult. So somewhere we also have to pick and choose. If perhaps all of you are from, say, Kerala, majority of you, it will be very difficult for you to travel, because these entrances do not also take place one after the other. So it's like if one is happening in the month of Jan, the other one would happen in the month of March. So you can't just stay there for 2 months. So somewhere, if you feel that you beat any college, be it NIMHANS, be it Manipal, be it IMHANS, CIPs, there are so many colleges, no matter what college, but I would still want you all to go and write at least few papers. So you would know where you are standing in the crowd, and that is from that point you have to build up. So it's okay if you score 30 marks, 50 marks. I did not feel bad when I scored 50, but then I felt, okay, perhaps that is where, when I wrote PGI Rohtak in 2017 itself, I scored, I still remember marks, because I'm somebody who has high fear of failure. I was happy, but then I here also, I could not clear. I scored 54 marks. Enhanced Calicut, I do not know how much I scored. Net JRF, I was able to clear. Amity, I cleared, but I do not know how much I scored. So somewhere, just this is a very important point, to know the pattern of the exam. And each of the institute, I think they follow similar pattern. By similar pattern, I mean that more clinical questions, abnormal psychology, cognitive psychology, neuropsychology, also statistics, and less of other things like organizational, do not read at all. I'll come to that later. Then coming to preparation. So I basically started my journey with books on history of psychology, followed by foundations of psychology and subspecialty of psychology, other specialities. And what I did here differently, I was told by Dr. Nigesh that do not spend a lot of time in making notes, but try rereading them. And he also gave me a reason, because in the exam, you will be given 4 options. So there you don't have to recall, you just have to recognize out of those 4 options. But if at all you have studied it at any point of your life, not life, I would say, that preparation time, there are high chances that you will be able to recognize. But then since I had more time, and I'm also somebody who likes making notes. So I made a lot of notes. So it's not that, and what I used to do was every day morning 2 hours was just for notes revising. So initially it was definitely less because once you would start, you would just have one or two handouts to revise. But then whatever I felt was important, because I also knew the pattern, like what kind of questions come in the exam. So whatever I felt was important for the exam purpose, I used to make a note. Not only that, I think I made a lot of notes that ways. I'm sorry for not telling you the truth, a lot of notes, but then don't worry, you don't have to do the same thing. If you feel you are somebody who can also remember things without making notes, or you are somebody who like underlining in your books, but then still, even if you underline the books, do not develop a habit of skipping between the lines or skipping the words and just reading the underlined part, because I think every word is important for an examiners. They can ask you anything, and that was the mistake I made in my first three exams basically. NIMHANS 2017, uh, PGI Rohtak, and NIMHANS Calicut. Here, what I did was I was just reading the bold words, whichever words were bold in the book, and I was not reading it word by word. After the exams, I realized that there were things which I have read, but I was not able to remember, or I did not know the answer because of my habit of skipping between the words and skipping between the lines. So I think that is what I changed when I start after the enhanced Calicut exam. I think it was somewhere in the month of September end or October. So somewhere around that, October starting. I think yeah, it was October starting. So then that was quite early because September I started preparing. By October, I was able to remember or recognize what mistake I was making. So I tried correcting that for my other exams, and Net JRF that I was able to clear, Amity Jaipur I was able to clear, and also NIMHANS with the same habit, not skipping between the words, rereading the books many a times. So I think if I've written here history of psychology, foundations, cognitive psychology, abnormal psychology, physiological psychology, neuropsychology, personality is very important, developmental is important, therapies is again very important because you would be going to an institute wherein primarily you would be learning therapies. So there were quite a few questions directly related to therapies. If this is the condition, what therapy do you give? If it's borderline personality disorder, there were four options. So definitely we all will do DBT skills training. So somewhere just keep in mind therapies, theories, everything has to be like you have to reread it. Like in one reading, you would not remember. Statistics, I remember. So this was one of my strengths in that exam because I also emphasized on stats. Like I told you, I was weak in it. I had to, not weak, I would say I was scared. Like since childhood, I'm scared of numbers. So my friend helped me. And in that paper, I remember there were 12 to 13 questions related to statistics, and they were not, I would not say they were very difficult or very easy, somewhere around mild to moderate difficulty I would rate them. So since I prepared statistics, I was able to score good marks. I was able to fetch all 13 marks in statistics because I did not ignore it. Psychological testing is very important. So they would just give you a name of the test, and they will ask you who is the author, who has written this test. Or for Rorschach, they would ask what does it measure. So in Rorschach, we all know there are some, like alphabets. So we also need to know the meaning of that alphabet, like what is location, what is form, what is content. Not in very detail, but at least you should have some idea about it. There were also questions related to how many cards are there in Rorschach or in TAT that way. So from testing also they ask a lot of questions, and from testing there were a lot of questions related to reliability and validity also. So I think somewhere these are the things that I would want all of you to pay more emphasis on. Then research methodology, I don't remember many questions coming from it, but even if it's like 2 questions, 3 questions, 4 questions, again each question matters in NIMHANS because from 0.25 people do not get into that course. So somewhere, do not worry about how much weightage each and every subject has. If you have enough time, I would ask you to go ahead with everything. Do not skip anything which might come in the exam, because like I told you, each and every question matters. And then ICD 10. So I do not know, definitely it was not my idea to read ICD 10 because it was very boring when I started. But I remember one of my friends from that group of three told us, both of us, to go ahead with the ICD part. And that was nice because I think there were 3 to 4 questions from ICD which I was able to, like, directly, they would give a criteria, ask which disorder it is. And they would also give us very confusing questions. It's not that the criteria is for mood disorders and then they'll give us personality, anxiety, and other things. No, if it's eating disorder, I remember it was eating disorder my time, when I wrote, and all the eating disorders were the option. So many a times even the options are confusing, so perhaps prepare accordingly. So I think these were the topics. I think I somewhere missed social psychology. Do not skip that. A lot of questions, at least 8 to 10 questions, were from social psychology, but all of them were very basic questions. I'll also tell you, I have that list with me. I'll share what all questions I still remember from the exam. Then coming to, okay, very important part. Whenever I felt demotivated, what did I tell myself to motivate again? So again, I used to imagine life with an M.Phil degree. All right. So that was very fascinating itself because I had done many internships, and in Fortis also I remember my internship. So the work culture was very different. Clinical psychologists were given priority over counseling psychologists. So that part also was there. They used to get more difficult cases, better pay, definitely. So life with an MPhil degree was something that I had on my demotivated list whenever I felt demotivated. Then I also did some upward comparison. No, sorry, I would call it downward comparison, because preparing for UPSC is very difficult. So I thought, okay, what I am doing is much easier. So that also kept me going. Then I also, because I'm basically from Rajasthan, in my college, both UG, PG, I did from Delhi University. So weather was a very significant issue for me. So I also wanted to be in a very, pleasant weather. So that also kept me motivated. No, I cannot afford to miss my chance to get into NIMHANS, because if at all there is some other institute except the ones that are there in South India, they are going to be very, the weather conditions is something that I was also very concerned about. That kept me motivating. So if at all you also have such preferences, different people have different preferences, so don't go with mine. Then I also had this thing, okay, I'll make new friends. And the place, definitely, because I have been searching pictures, I was searching pictures for NIMHANS. So that also really helped me, that whenever I felt demotivated. And what were the reasons for feeling demotivated are also very important, because you might also come across the same reasons. First and foremost, I am not the topper of my college. There are there's a bleak possibility that I'll get into NIMHANS. Then I was in, like I told you, I was involved in many societies of my college, especially in UG. PG, I was just a part of sports society and theater society. But in my UG, I was in sports, I was in NCC, theater, college union. So I had many things that I explored. So somewhere, like I told you, I was good academically, 70% in my UG, I think somewhere around 69, 70 in my PG. But then I was not, I was not academically exceptional, that I was the topper. But then one reason being that my attention was diverted into many areas. So somewhere when you are in focusing attention on many aspects, so that was a very demotivating factor for me, because when I sat with my basics, I would say, though I scored 50 marks in my first exam, but half of them were just, trial and error. I just randomly ticked on few things. So I'm not proud of that I scored 50, but I knew somewhere I scored 50 because there was a lot of trial and error taking place. So that was a demotivating factor for me, since I am very poor with the basics part and I need to What my weakness was, I tapped on that and I made my basics very, very strong. So that is what, so when you write papers, you would get to know about your weaknesses, work on them, because what your strengths are, you already know. My strength was that I'm a very persistent person, like very hardworking whenever it comes. So that was my strength, and I think that was perhaps I was able to overcome these difficulties because of that. Then the last point was also very scary, calculating the number of seats and possible applicants in the exam. So I think even you all would be having this, that, okay, my batchmates were, say, 15 UG, some 60, 17, the clinical side masters. And then I started calculating the universities. Every state has so many universities, so many colleges. So at times I used to get scared, but I remember my mother telling me one thing: why are you counting the number of applicants and number of seats? You just need one. So I think that point was a life turning thing for me, because up until then I was seeing it that way. Oh, these many students, these many seats. So I think I did not share that with my mother, but one day she saw me doing that. So she quickly came and she sat with me. I think she was a very good counselor when I was preparing, because many a time she was able to give me perspectives and also soothe me down whenever I was stressed out. So she used to take me out for long drives whenever I was feeling very upset that what will happen. Life is not going anywhere. Look at my colleagues, my batchmates. They are into jobs. So many other things. So that was a demotivating phase for me. But then I was able to pull through, because I think somewhere the support system of my family as well. Okay, then coming to books. So for history of psychology, I refer to the Comprehensive History of Psychology by Arun Kumar Singh. Uh, though the paper quality is very poor, but then the book actually clears a lot of your basics. So I think it's a must read, no matter what entrance exam you are writing. If you want to stay in the field of psychology, it's a must read, though written by an Indian author with poor page quality, but the content is very, very comprehensive. So somewhere I would recommend that. For introduction, so for foundations of psychology, I'm pretty sure you all would have Morgan and King and Cicerelli. So these were the two books for basics. Along with that, I also referred to GRE psychology, which was referred by Dr. Nigesh again. So he asked me to go through GRE psychology, and a lot of questions were actually from GRE psychology in the year 2018. So I think my batchmates were telling me that, I think I remember 3 to 4 batchmates of mine telling me, since they wrote the entrance exam in their masters and some of them were working, so they did not really have much time to go through many things. But then one thing that they all did was GRE psychology, which was common. I think all of us, majority of us, if I think the intake was 20 that year, and out of 2015 people refer to GRE psychology. It's a very basic book. After reading, you would see, oh, how can somebody give questions from here? But then somewhere that also played out in people's favor, whosoever read GRE psychology nicely. So I'm not saying that you only have to read one book. For foundations, read as many books as possible and read them as many times as possible. So I remember reading History of Psychology some 6, 7 times, because I had time also and I was a fast reader. Foundations of Psychology also many a times, 3 times, 4 times. I do not even remember all the 3 books, I'm telling you. Then for cognitive psychology, I refer to Stenberg. So the PDF is also available for Stenberg, but not for the other books. So this was also again referred by I think Dr. Nigesh himself told me. And I also had some other readings from my master's, because we had a paper on cognitive psychology. So somewhere, whatever notes I had prepared during my master's, I also referred to them. But then the notes were mainly related to decision making, problem solving, memory, attention, language. So these were the things which I paid more attention on in cognitive psychology. Then abnormal psychology, I've written Barron or Barlow, but I refer to Barlow and ICD-10. So I think irrespective of the author, you can go ahead with Barron also. It's a good book. But since I had Barlow, so I refer to Barlow, not Barron. But I think Barron is most widely used in at least in our country. And do not forget the little ICD-10. Then for physiology, I only refer to Carlson. So I think his book is also available online because there were a few questions from physiology because it's again a very important topic when it comes to NIMHANS, because if you would go into that setting, you would see that physiology in itself is a paper out there in second year. So somewhere you should have some basic knowledge about physiology. Not many questions, but at least 5 questions would be there. Neuropsychology, again, NIMHANS has a department of neuropsychology, and we all have our 3 months posting. So they are also very fond of neuro-related questions. So for here, I think Dr. Nigesh referred to some other book, but I also had neuropsychology in my master's, this paper, and we were asked to read a book by Zillmer. So again, Zillmer's book is available online. If you all have any other book, I would say any book would do for NIMHANS entrance. Only basics need to be clear, nothing else. They are not going to ask you like very technical questions. Out of 100, perhaps 5 questions they would ask, but those questions are basically, they are also expecting no one to answer. So we do not have to aim at that perfection 5 questions. We only have to aim at, we know as many things as possible, not only a few things. For personality, because again, personality, we know there are many theories. It is also related to basics. Whatever you would read, you will be able to collaborate with the previous readings. So I think I refer to Skulls and Skulls books on theories of personality, and this is also available online. It's a good and brief book. So I think there were questions from personality theories as well. Then for psychotherapy and counseling, so when you would read personality and psychotherapy and counseling, somewhere you would see a lot of repetition, but that's good because whatever you have read in one of the books, it's also getting consolidated in the other book, because somewhere the same theories they will be talking about, but then in a different way, in a different perspective, and there would be definitely 1 or 2 new things that you would learn by referring to another book in each and every topic, and that's important. So I refer to Theories of Psychotherapy and Counseling by Richard Schraff, and this book is also available online. I would also recommend a PDF is available for this book. So even if you have other books for counseling and personality, but somewhere I would also recommend you all to go through this book, because somewhere there were a good number of questions related to psychotherapy and counseling as well. Coming to statistics, so King and Minium was the author, but I feel for statistics, whatever, because all of you might have had statistics in your masters and UG, so whatever book you have referred to, I would recommend you to go ahead with that book, and whatever topics were covered during your UG and PG days, because I also did the same. So this book was, I referred to it when I was in UG, and also I had few notes from my PG. So it's not only this book, I also had additional notes and few handouts. I do not remember the books because I think they are just photocopied things. So for statistics, whatever you have read so far, try to reread it again. Again, psychological testing. So I'm saying everything is important. So it means everything is important. Psychological testing also, there were many questions, at least 10 questions from psychological testing, wherein they would ask about particular tests. They also asked about 4-5 questions from reliability and validity. So again, whichever book you feel you are more comfortable with, you can go ahead with it. But Gregory also gives a very good account on testing. So for intelligence testing, how I made my notes for each and every domain, like intelligence, cognitive. So I think it's more or less same, personality, achievement tests. So what I did was I made separate notes. I note down the test name, the author, the age range, and the main areas covered in that test, because they can also ask you one of the domain they would give you, and they will ask which of these following tests measure this particular ability. So somewhere make it and also if you would read it like that, that you are just linking. So test, author's name, when it was published, age range, and the areas measured. So if it's only about intelligence, if you would reread it like, many a times every day, if you would just spend 1 or 2 hours, reading your notes, if not on a regular basis, at least once or twice a week, you will be able to remember. Don't worry. Initially, it's going to be difficult to remember so many years. It's okay if you're not able to remember years also, but age range is important. I remember they asked us age range for CPM, which is colored progressive matrices. They asked for Bender and Gestalt tests author's name. They asked for domains measured in Rorschach. They asked for the number of cards in TAT. So somewhere everything is important. You do not know for one test, what are they going to ask? They can ask you anything. So I think psychological testing is also something that you should pay a little bit more attention on. Then research methodology. I don't remember exactly many questions from this topic, but then still it's important because NIMHANS, if not NIMHANS and other institutes also, I think research is going to be a part of your course. So though I'm not able to recollect, but then this topic is also important. Do not go into the depth, but at least you should know the names of the experiments we have, the researches, qualitative, quantitative, what comes under each one of them. Very briefly, you should have some idea about it, because if at all there are 5, 6 questions which are very easy to answer if you have read the topic. So do not skip this part also. Okay, so I think I am done with my presentation. Any questions? Because I think somewhere I did not answer one of the queries, which was what about the course and so on. So if at all there are any questions, I think I'll go ahead with that. Firstly, I'll give you guys an option to ask me questions.
Am I audible?
Yes, Pranav, you are audible.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask this one thing that NIMHANS as an institute is not RCI registered. So, what is the procedure that we have to get done if we pass out from NIMHANS in order to get RCI license?
Right. So I think it's a very important question. When we all entered with the query, what will we do after MPhil if we do not have that license? So basically, NIMHANS was established before the RCI. So somewhere NIMHANS has a regulatory body. It is actually a regulatory body in itself. So even after your MPhil, so I have my RCI license with me. Why? Because they also give an option when you apply for the RCI. They also give us an option, if you are also from NIMHANS, you can apply. So basically, NIMHANS people, even if they do not have an RCI, people are not going to pose questions if at all anything wrong happens during the period of their training, or perhaps their private practice. But then you will be getting an RCI if you apply for it, even if you are from NIMHANS, because somewhere NIMHANS established before the RCI. So it's a regulatory body in itself. It does not need RCI's permission or license, but then for our own safety, we need to apply for it. And you will be getting, if at all you clear NIMHANS, you will be getting RCI.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody?
Yes. Good morning. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Mithilesh.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, as in the starting you said that the doctor something name I didn't remember, that he get into the UPSC as a psychologist. So, ma'am, what is the procedure and how did he get into the
All
UPSC as
right.
a psychologist?
So basically, if you want to get, so I also did not inquire much, but I have seen many notifications from UPSC nowadays. So they have this assistant professor post, and they ask for MPhil many a times and a PhD. So MPhil again in clinical psychology. And so if you want to apply in UPSC, so you need to have an MPhil and a PhD degree, not necessarily clinical. Any PhD degree in psychology would do. That is the essential requirement for you to have that assistant professor post in UPSC. So that's what I remember. You can also check on Google. I might be wrong, but I think I remember reading it somewhere long time back.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome, Mithilesh.
Ma'am,
Yes, Smriti.
ma'am, after passing the entrance, is there any interview at NIMHANS?
No,
And
there's
if
no
so,
interview. So basically, they'll make a counseling list. So on the basis of your scorecard, and I think now they have. It's a very good thing that they have increased their seats. So when I entered, the seats were 20. Now they have 30. So when I entered, I think for all the other categories, seats are similar. For general category, they have double the amount of seats. So initially, I think there were 7 seats. Now it's 14 for general, and there's no counseling. So if your name is there and the applicant is there, so they'll just give you admission. So that's actually nice that there's no interview, there's no favoritism happening in the interview. So don't worry about that. If you clear counseling, I think there are high chances if you come into the merit and you have the rank, you will get in without having to go undergo that interview.
thank you, ma'am.
Welcome, Smriti.
Also, ma'am, I had one
Ma'am,
more question, ma'am. Oh, okay, okay. Go ahead, Smriti.
no, you present.
Okay, fine. Ma'am, my another question was that also, like, in continuation with MPhil, we can also opt for Psych D in a lateral for a lateral admission in Psych D. So even after we do NIMHANS, even after we do MPhil from NIMHANS, is the procedure still the same, or
Yeah.
do they require uh,
Mhm.
or do they require the for lateral entry? Do they require a MPhil from RCI registered institute?
So I think, as far as I know, because I remember before my MPhil, I was one of my options was also PsyD, but I think apparently only one or two institutes in India are providing this course, one in Delhi and one in Hyderabad. And when I inquired about it, so basically for PsyD, even if you have done your MPhil, I think it's a 4-year course that you will have to undergo. So, but then in our country, I don't know whether SAIDI gives you a license or not, because I did not research further in that area. I might have done it, but I've forgotten now. But even if you do your MPhil, I think if you go ahead with SAIDI, as far as I know, you will have to do the 4-year training. You will. Mhm.
I guess that's like after masters we have to undergo 4-year training. But
Right,
there is
right.
also another option that we can do MPhil first and then we can opt for Psych D lateral entry. So
All
first
right,
two
all
years will
right.
be of MPhil and from third year we can join in Psych D program.
All
So
right.
it was
So
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, Pranav, I think I do not have the sufficient information around it. So I think you can take help of Google, because I do
Yeah.
not want to give you any information where I don't
Yes,
have.
yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
Sure.
that.
No problem, ma'am.
So Smriti, you
Ma'am,
were asking something. Mhm.
ma'am, ICD is sufficient, or we have also go for DSM?
I think ICD is sufficient, because in NIMHANS also you will be referring to ICD, because in India we do not refer to DSM for diagnosing or for establishing a diagnosis. We take the reference sometimes when few of the conditions are not in ICD. But I think for us, ICD is more important, because in our country, our ICD is practiced by all the psychiatrists and clinical psychologists as compared to DSM. DSM is just for reference. If at all few things, few criterias are not in the ICD, then to make sense, and to give a diagnosis to the client, we also refer to DSM only when ICD does not have that category.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mhm. So I think there were a few questions that I have written.
Ma'am,
Mhm.
ma'am, I have a question.
Yes, Mithilesh.
Ma'am, I have heard about a degree like a clinical neuropsychologist. Ma'am, can you please tell me how we become a
Right.
clinical neuropsychologist after MPhil?
Right. So basically, if you have done your MPhil, so I'm not sure about other institutes, but definitely we all MPhil people have to undergo neuropsych training as well. So somewhere you can also designate yourself as clinical neuropsychologist, because if it, we when I was there, I had a 3 months posting in the neuropsych unit, and it was like, assessments, everything, cognitive retraining, very intense structure there. So I remember one of my professors telling us that you can also practice as a clinical neuropsychologist, Priya, if at all you do not want to do therapies and some other things in future. So somewhere I think my colleague Nizamuddin is also pursuing his MPhil. If at all he knows anything more about it, he can answer. But as far as I know, you can also designate yourself as clinical neuropsychologist because you have a training in that area, because it's a part of your MPhil training that there's a course, there's a paper on neuropsychology itself.
Okay.
But apart from that, any courses which give you this degree, I'm not sure about it, Mithilesh. But then through MPhil, you can also have this designation.
Oh, thank you, ma'am.
So I think I will also share the questions which came in 2017 paper. I have my old copy with me. So the first question I've written, they asked about draw a man test. Then it was about little Albert experiment. They also asked about schedules of reinforcement. And then we all have heard about Weber's law. So it also this is a part of our foundations. Then Schneider's understanding of delusion. So like I told you, there would be few questions where you cannot answer at all. So this was one of the questions wherein they asked about delusions. That too, so there's a person called Schneider, his criteria. Then they asked about dimensions of Rorschach, location, shape, color, pattern. So these were the options. Then there was a question about internal consistency, which is related to reliability. They also asked about concurrent validity and content validity. Then they asked, for statistics, they asked how to find SD when n and variance is given. So when number and variance is given, how you can find the standard deviation. Then they asked about Kelly's construct. So I think Kelly's construct is a part of personality. So theories of personality, when you would read, you would know this. Then they asked about Freud's stages of development. Then they asked about Erickson's psychosocial stages of development, some question, in this particular aspect also. Then they asked about action potential, excitatory potential, and postsynaptic potential. So we also know that this is a part of, again, it will be covered in these foundations, but also the physiology. Then they asked about Helmholtz's tricolor theory. So this is also, when you would read the foundations, you would know where it is coming from. They asked a question about how many axes are there in ICD-10. So this was there. Then again, a question related to therapy. Pivotal response therapy is used in which condition? So it is used in autism. So there was a question on prototype, which is definitely a cognitive psychology question. Then they asked about proactive inhibition, retroactive interference. It's again cognitive psychology. They asked about parasomnias. So again, if you would read abnormal psychology, you would know what parasomnias are. There was a question on mood disorder. There was a question on tic disorder. There was a question on Tourette's syndrome. Then they asked about somatosensory cortex is about this. So in which lobe it exists, so that. Then they asked about arcuate facilis. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. So it is related to corpus callosum. Then they asked about Raven's progressive matrices age range, which is 5 to 11. Then they asked about scale for corrective scale for correction in MMPI. So it's K scale. There was a question on Knox cube test. So basically, it's a test of non-verbal intelligence. So they asked verbal, non-verbal achievement, which type of a test it is. There was a question on prejudice, which is a social psychology concept. They also asked about social comparison theory given by Festinger. There was a question on narcolepsy. So we know, I think it's narcolepsy, whatever it is. So there was a question on that. Then there was a question on illusion. So I think, again, it's coming from basics. There was a question on wavelength. So again, when you would read the foundations, first or second chapter talks about wavelength, hue, color. So when it's talking about the theories of color, so I think somewhere it's given over there. So then they asked about rhodopsin, which is road cells. Again, it's a part of our foundations. Then in statistic, they asked about phi correlation, bicedal correlation, and tetra correlation. And then there was a question on archetypes, which is definitely a personality and psychotherapy part. They also asked about shadow, again, Jungian concept, archetype and shadow. There was a question, I don't remember, but I've written Carl Rogers' theory. So somewhat related to that, there was a question. Then they asked about ANOVA's non-parametric test. So we all know ANOVA is a parametric test. What is the non-parametric test of ANOVA? Then they asked about flashbulb memory is also known as, so it's also known as pseudo memory. So these were the questions that I have written down. Yeah. From 2017 paper, only these many questions I was able to remember. But trust me, paper is very basic. No matter which paper you are writing, it just you need to have a very strong hold on the basics. So all the papers are important for that matter, all the entrance exams, but just aim at a higher level. All the institutes are actually leading to the same outcome, which is MPhil degree and RCI license.
Ma'am, will be the model question papers available anywhere? Any books or?
No, I think model question papers are not available, Arun. So like I told earlier, for model question papers, you can refer to different states' public service commission site, and then you can have previous year papers for psychology. But I would say these states like Karnataka and even Kerala set and Tamil Nadu set questions were really good. So the more questions you would read from Karnataka Public Service Association, Public Service Commission, I think there were a lot of questions which were very relevant for my MPhil entrance. That time I remember. So I think you can also do that if model papers are not available. You can have a look on the websites of each and every public service commission of all the states.